I ran 3 half marathons over the course of a couple of years. This was about, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago. And what happened was I ran those 3 halves over that span, and then I decided to jump straight to a 100-mile race. And I know that's kind of absurd. I know it's absurd. I'm glad I went down that path with running, but I want to talk about why I believe a lot of runners end up DNFing or do not finish the race, or they quit in the middle of the run, or they just decide to give up. And because I have some experiences with this. In fact, that first 100-mile attempt I had after my third half marathon, I ended up quitting. And I'm going to talk about that, but I want to give you perspective as to why I think most people quit, or when I've quit, why that was. Now, if we put injuries aside, like if we put aside tears, rolling an ankle, breaking something, maybe it's not being super developed in running and maybe biting off more than you're ready for, which is a concept within itself. Like, I don't want to get into that, but you can walk several miles. If you're at 20 miles, should you give up on a marathon or should you walk it out? I think you should walk it out, but I would walk it out, I guess is what I should say. It's obviously up to you and what's right for you. But I would walk that out if I had enough time and wasn't going to get cut off because I was out there too long. But I'm getting sidetracked. My point being, if we put that stuff aside, let's talk about when people quit, and as soon as they quit, or they turn in their bib at an ultra race, or they sit down in the car or go home, they think how, like, a common story is what people say is as soon as they quit, they regret it. And they're like, oh, I could have kept going. As soon as they've thrown in the towel, they immediately feel better in the sense of like they realize they could have kept going. And this happened during my first 100-mile attempt. So I ran those 3 half marathons. I picked on that third one, I picked a 100-mile race, 102-mile race. That was like 8 months later. And I started training. I trained really hard. I even ran a 54 miler a couple months out. And I felt like I gave that training my all. I really do believe that. And so the way this race was set up was it was a 6-mile loop. It was the last one standing type of format. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically each runner starts each lap at the same time. And if you finish the lap early within the time frame, you have to wait before you begin the next one because everyone starts again. So this particular race is last one standing in St. George, Utah. And it's a 6-mile loop. You got 90 minutes to do it. So let's say you finish at 70 minutes or 85 minutes, whatever it is. You wait until that full 90 minutes, and you all start together. And so if you don't finish within that loop within the 90 minutes, you're dropped from the race. Like, you can't continue. And so I remember just getting to 50 miles and feeling terrible, obviously, and I ended up doing 66 miles. So in this particular race, they don't call it a DNF. They don't say you dropped out if you don't make it the 100 miles. If you make one loop, you finish the race. It's just how far can you go. And so I made it 66 miles, and it's not like on my record that I dropped out. But I quit because I was shooting for the 102 miles. I wanted the full distance. So I knew I dropped out, and I quit. And the main reason why this happened, that I believe, is sure, I was young and ultra running. Like, maybe I wasn't quite prepared for it. But in the moment when I quit and I was watching these other runners go around and continue, I realized, not till later, but like I was sitting there thinking like, hey, I could have done more, but I realized why I quit, and that was because I was thinking too far into the future. The idea of presence is, I don't think, unfamiliar to people. Maybe you're working on it. I'm working on being more present. But I was thinking about what it would feel like at mile 80 when I was at mile 66. I was thinking about, could I do another 30 plus miles, when really I should have been thinking about, can I finish this lap? And so I've had other race experiences where I feel this and think this way, but I've become aware of it so I can combat it and try and remind myself to be present. I just ran a 50K 3 days ago. I did not expect the course to be that difficult. I should have done more research. Most of it was sand. And I remember thinking early on, maybe I should quit. It wasn't what I wanted. And I think the reason why I had that thought is because I was thinking about another, 28 miles in sand. And I wasn't doing those 28 miles. I was finishing the 6th mile. And so obviously, over enough time, you cover the whole distance. But if you can tune in, if you can think in the moment, how do I actually feel? And this is something that takes a lot of practice, especially in a new distance PR or trying to set a PR for time, you have to remind yourself when you get in those moments, how do I actually feel right now? Because you're going to be uncomfortable, right? If you're 13 miles into a 26.2 mile race, you're obviously going to feel it 13 miles in. But if you tune in and you're not thinking about how you have to do that same distance again, you have to do another 13 miles. If you sit there and you think, well, how do I actually feel? Like, can I take another step? This is not a unfamiliar, like a strange concept. Like, people in the sport who are pretty seasoned and have done enough racing, they realize this, that you can tune into the moment and realize, yeah, you hurt, but it's not as bad as you think it is. And so again, put the injuries aside, put the, rolled ankle or broken shins aside, that for the most part in my experience, when I think about quitting and then I tune into how do I actually feel, I have enough to go another mile. I have enough to walk for a half a mile and then start running again. I had enough to do at least one more lap. Now, I was new to ultra running. The furthest I'd ran was a 13 miler or 13.1 half marathon before I decided to sign up for the 100-mile race. So maybe I would have made it 72 miles and I would have been done. I would have hurt myself and not been able to continue. But I know, looking back on that moment when I hit 66 miles and I decided to quit, I started the loop and then came back and threw in the towel. I remember thinking, oh, I could have done more. And I was too overwhelmed by another 36 miles that was in front of me. So when I feel like quitting, I try and remind myself that I'm thinking too far ahead. And sometimes you quit because of stomach pain, and sometimes you quit because you're puking up or too tired or whatever. But a lot of the times, I think when I've thought about quitting or when I've actually quit, it was because I was thinking too far ahead. So hopefully you get something out of this. Maybe this helps you in your next race, or if you're doing ultras, or I don't care what distance. I think running at any distance is honorable and impressive. I just know I've dealt with this more and more as they do the ultra distances compared to half marathons. So I hope you get something out of this. And if you like running content, that's what this channel is about. I'm trying to help people learn from my mistakes and deepen their relationship with running, because running's quite literally saved my life. So I hope something I share can help you personally, and I hope I get to see you in another video sometime soon. Peace.